the musical love of my life, the cream to my coffee, the salt in my stew, the berries in my yogurt. I'm talking about jazz, folks. We're gonna talk about jazz. Let's do it. Honey, what's up, folks? My name's Danny Wellington. I do videos on jazz, style, and culture. And today, we're answering your questions about jazz. So before we get into it, if you're new here, please subscribe. Hit that red button down there, like the video, and let me know the first jazz song you ever heard. Was it Louis Armstrong, Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald? Was it Ray Charles doing Georgia on My Mind? I bet you didn't know that was a jazz song. Baby, that's a jazz song. Now, jazz is a quintessentially American art form, the first fully American art form created by African Americans in the South, and it traveled all over the country and the world. It went to places like Chicago, where it got its own sound, to New York, where it got its own sound, to LA, where it got its own sound, and of course, it grew up in New Orleans, where it has a sound of its own. It's affected pop culture in America and around the world in ways that almost can't be quantified. From the very foundations of the theater to the way that we listen to music during Christmas time, jazz is ever present. And it is the building block on which all other American musical art forms are built. I'm talking about rock and roll, I'm talking about funk, I'm talking about soul, rhythm and blues, hip hop. Everything is built on jazz. At me, bro. At me. So today I'm answering your questions on jazz, how it interacts with my life, the history, the culture, all of it. We're gonna cover all of it. And I gotta say, I'm excited. I'm excited to go through these questions and see what you guys said. Jazz has affected my life in ways that I can't even quantify. So let's get into it right now. Alright, Delia Wallace 81 asks, what musical instrument do you think represents jazz music the most? Well, to be honest, for me, it's three. The trumpet, the piano, and the vocals. Why? Because in early jazz bands, the trumpet is basically the one in charge. The trumpet is the leader. The trumpet lays down the melody of every tune, lets people know when they're soloing, not to mention that some of the greatest musicians in jazz were trumpet players. People like Louis Armstrong, like Miles Davis, like Buddy Berrigan, and like Bix Beiderbecke. Trumpet players are king. Now, the other instrument that I mentioned was piano. I cannot dispute that the piano is an important instrument in jazz for a couple of different reasons. One, the piano is a robust chord instrument that really lays down the foundation of whatever tune you're playing. You need chords to play melodies over, and the piano is one of the best instruments to do just that. In jazz, there are many different styles of piano playing, and those styles are very often cemented by the masters who made their mark playing the piano. I'm talking about ragtime with James P. Johnson and Scott Joplin. I'm talking about stride piano with Willie the Lion Smith and Fats Waller. There's Teddy Wilson with his style. There's Duke Ellington with his style. And of course, Count Basie with his style. And who can forget one of the masters of hard bop and bebop, Thelonious Monk. He had a style of his own. So the piano is absolutely an important aspect of jazz, an important instrument that defines the genre. And the third would have to be the vocalists. Jazz singing is an art. And those interpreters of lyrics, those sirens of song, those jazz singers are tasked with and often well equipped to tell the story of the music. Singers like Bessie Smith and Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, and Ethel Waters, Billy Eckstine, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Bing Crosby. The reason why we know these singers' names isn't just because of their contribution to the music and to the genre, but because their ability to connect us to the story of the tunes we're listening to. They are interpreters. They are proxies for our own emotions when we listen to the songs that make jazz what it is. When I mention a song like Night and Day, night and day, you are the one, or Stormy Weather, more often than not, you're thinking about the singers who sang those songs. They helped you connect to the story as well as the music. Alright, Cat Joe 89 asks, for a newbie in jazz, who would you recommend listening to? Current or original artists? There's a lot of people that I would recommend. In fact, I have a Spotify playlist dedicated to some of the current practitioners of early jazz and swing that are living and performing right now. But if I was to recommend some of the earlier records, I would recommend Louis Armstrong and his Hot 5s and 7s. Incredible. Also, I would recommend Billie Holiday's Brunswick recording sessions from 1935 to 1938. Those records are fantastic. Billie Holiday in general is a singular voice in jazz, and she sounds incredible throughout her entire career, even when things were rough for her. But those records, those Brunswick recording, ooh, so good, so good. I would also recommend Fats Waller and his rhythm. If you want swing, if you want unbridled Harlem, New York swing, Fats Waller. Fats Waller is one of my all-time favorites. Then I would also recommend the Benny Goodman Trio and Quartet. An incredible set of records with Benny Goodman, Teddy Wilson, Gene Krupa, and Lionel Hampton. So freaking good, so good. If you have any favorite records, write them down in the comments below. I want to see what you guys would recommend. There's so much great jazz out there. Michaela McNamara 14 asks, who are your inspirations as a band leader? Fats Waller, Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway. There's a lot of great band leaders out there. Jimmy Lunsford. A lot of big shoes to fill. Clara Azotti asks, as a jazz musician, what do you think of Amy Winehouse? Her first album, Frank, was really jazzy. Amy Winehouse is cool. She's cool. Drawn by the Stream asks, favorite song to perform? To hear performed? I would say that one of my favorite songs to perform is I'll Build a Stairway to Paradise. Gershwin. Check it out. The verse is crazy. It appears in American in Paris. You'll recognize it. Valentin in Metro asks, who are some great female jazz artists? Come on, man. There's too many. There's too many. Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, Billie Holiday, Rosemary Clooney, Bessie Smith, Ethel Waters, Carmen McRae, Martina da Silva, Elise, June Christie, Dinah Shore, the Boswell sisters, Blossom Dearie, Vanessa Perea. There's just too many. Alright, Elena's Doll asks, is there a misconception of jazz that you always feel the need to clear up? Well, how much time do you have? One of the biggest misconceptions about jazz that I often want to clear up is the fact that jazz musicians are just on stage doing whatever. That it's a free-for-all and everyone's just playing whatever they want, whenever they want, and calling it music. That's not at all, even remotely what is happening. So when jazz musicians are playing, they're playing over tunes. Chances are those tunes are very much based on the American musical tradition. So they are AABA form tunes. Sometimes that tune has a verse.
Weather is frightening, the thunder and lightning seem to be having their way. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a lovely day.
A little section of music just before the main part of the song or the chorus. But oftentimes the musicians are playing over that AABA form. Now, when they're soloing, they are soloing over the chord changes, the foundation of that AABA form. They're just soloing over that form. They're just doing it without playing the melody. They may reference the melody, they may hint at the melody, they may play other melodies or licks or phrases that would work over those chord changes that exist within the sections of A, B, A, but they're not just doing whatever they want. I mean, it's based on the form. And this misconception mostly comes from people not actively listening to jazz or just not listening enough. But the more you listen to it, the more you'll hear them going through the form. The more you'll hear them referencing different sections of the form. So the idea that jazz musicians are just playing whatever they want, whenever they want, isn't true. They're not. Another misconception is that musicians or artists in general are just doing it for the love of the art. And that's all they need, that's all they care about. They have no financial perspective on it at all. It's just the love of the art. Of course, we love what we do. Whatever your art is, whether it be poetry or sculpture or music, whatever. Yes, it's a form of self-expression. Yes, it's a way of you tackling your demons. Yes, it's a way of you processing your life. But it's also a job. So we need to get paid for it. If you're going to appreciate it, you should be okay with paying us for it. Think about it this way. During everything that's been going on, the last couple months, who have you turned to in order to help you get through it? Artists. You've turned to musicians. You've turned to actors. You've turned to writers. You've turned to artists. People who have helped you to forget the woes of the world are artists. People who have tempted you to dream are artists. People who have helped you sleep at night even though the world is uncertain, they're artists. So they should get paid for what they do. Can I get an amen in the comment section, please? Nice job, Elena. You got me. You got me fuming a little bit. You got me heated over here. Tessellate. Most underrated jazz performer from history. To jazz musicians, probably Tiny Parham. To normal people, I don't know, all of them. Easy Rock asks, how does performing for dance audiences differ from non-dance audiences? Vibe, song choice? Well, when you're performing for dancers, you really have to be aware of the tempos that you're playing. If someone is dancing to jazz, especially if they're doing Lindy Hop or any kind of other social dance, you want to be very cognizant of what tempos you're playing, how fast those tempos are, and how many fast or slow tempos in a row you're playing. Whereas for non-dance audiences, it really depends on the situation. My rule of thumb is entertainment and showbiz above all. You gotta put on a show. You are entertaining people. If you're standing on a stage, if you're in front of a camera, you're entertaining people. So, keep it entertaining. Keep engaging people. Figure out what's going to connect with that audience. But that's just me. I want to take a moment to thank everybody on Instagram for sending me these questions. Jazz music is such an important part of my life. It's an important part of the way that I express myself on stage and off. It's basically the soundtrack to how I people. Not to mention, it was created by my ancestors. So I feel very connected and proud of this musical art form. And I'm honored to be able to share it with people who want to know more about it. So, if you have any questions about jazz, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and ring the bell so you can get notifications. Keep swinging. I'll see you soon. Thank you to my patrons. So good.